that sphere and the business will change a lot, because we saw what was happening in some other markets like UK, for example, which was like many steps ahead of us. And we understand that we have to develop the digital product because that's the future. And now actually that everything is in digital.
So are you planning on reopening the stores or not?
No, that's what I was talking about, that even so we can do that. We can open the betting shops now in Ukraine and in some other countries, because now Parimatch works not only in Ukraine. We are like international company now. We work in many places. So, but we are never trying to do that because we think that all our clients are online. So we develop only that part. We will never return to the land-based business.
From Coordinate Sport, it's The Drive Phase, a show about sports founders, leaders and experts and the stories behind their business journeys. Our guest this episode is Katerina Biloruska, founder and supervisory board member of Parimatch Tech and chairwoman of the Parimatch Foundation. Katerina and her co-founders revitalized the high street family business to become a powerhouse of online gaming. Using the internet to bring a traditional business into the future, the success of Parimatch has enabled the launch and rollout of the Parimatch Foundation. In peacetime, the foundation worked to improve the health and well-being of society by providing children with the equal opportunities and access to sports and education. At the moment, they are working for one goal: to help the civilian people of the Ukraine. During the show, we discuss the launch of the foundation and the impact they are making for citizens in need. Enjoy the show.
Okay, I'm delighted to welcome Katerina Biloruska to the show today. She is a member of the advisory board at Parimatch Tech and chairwoman of the Parimatch Foundation. Welcome to the show, Katerina.
Hi, hello. Thank you for inviting me.
It's been great. Thank you so much for flexibility. I know we've been, battling schedules and time zones and locations, so it's great to have you on. What we normally do on the show is really give our listeners a little bit of insight into you and get to know you a little bit better quite quickly. And we find the best way to do that is if you go back to school days and talk about that. And given that we're focused on sport and sport tech, we always ask about kind of what was your experience of school growing up, and was it a sporty environment? Was it physically active? Were you competing in sport at that age?
Yeah, so I was studied in the ordinary school in Kiev, Ukraine. So, and as to talk about the sport, because, now the part of my job in the foundation, what we are doing, we are trying to develop the physical education at school. Because back to my school years, I remember that was not very advanced, and a lot of the children really don't like to join the lessons. And I remember that very good from my, school years. That's why maybe now it's very important for me to do that. Lessons are really cool, excited, and very interesting for the children in Ukraine, because I believe that the physical education and the sport is the best instrument for the developing of the children and their potential. So by doing the sport, you can do a lot. Like, it's good for health, it's good for your leadership, it's good for your communication skill, and so on and so on. So that's what I remember actually from my school year. And I remember that I was not so active in sport at that time because we do not have a lot of the possibilities to do that. Like, we had very ordinary lessons, and it was not so interesting actually to join.
So was that kind of the facilities or the teaching staff? Was it, or is it just maybe not a priority so much?
Yeah, it was absolutely not priority. Like, it was like more important was to study math or something like that. So. And it was, as I remember, it was like we were changing the physical education for some other, like we were asking if we cannot not to go to that lesson because we have some important lesson with some other teachers, and it was usually work. So it was no absolutely, it was not something very important for us at that period. For example, me as a student, I don't understand that it's like important for my development and for my health, or just it's very good to run half an hour or to do some exercises, because then it will be more easy for me to study because of some health processes like that, because nobody explain us.
Definitely. I know we're going to touch on that when we talk about the the program that are running through the foundation. But you touched on how important academics were in school, and so you went on initially you studied journalism, right? Is that your
Yes. After the school, I went to the university to the faculty of journalism, because actually after the school at that age, I think it's not easy to really understand whom you want to be in the future. I don't know a lot of the people who were really sure at that point when they graduated from the school whom they want to be in the future.
I don't think anyone is. Yeah.
There is some people, and they're very lucky, I think, if they really know. But that was not me. And why I choose journalism, because it was for me I always have some personal calling for communications, and I was thinking that's the cool profession, and it's nice to communicate with the people. It's nice to having the interview with them, to work on TV or on some magazine, and that was actually easy for me because I'm a fully humanitarian, so that's why I choose the journalism. But after I graduated, I actually never work as a journalist, because then I dive into the family business and I start to develop myself there, that sphere.
Oh, nice. So what was the family business? What were you doing there?
So actually, the Parimatch is my family business, the Parimatch Tech, as we call it
Right,
now.
understood.
Yeah, but back 2008, 2011, when I started my career in Parimatch, that was the betting company at that time, which was established by my father in 1994 in Ukraine. And it was like land-based business,
So yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah, what did it look like at that point? Was it very much kind of retail stores and?
Yeah, that was fully retail based. It was like now we call it old style, but at that time it was only possibility to work like that because the online sphere was not developed in Ukraine. So that's why my father was running that business during some time until the 2009. Then it was the ban of the betting business in Ukraine. And actually he was forced to close his business. But in some years, me and some other young guys who has some huge desire to develop, we came up with the idea to develop Parimatch as a betting online platform. And actually, at that point, we just take the trademark from my father and a piece of the team, which he still keeps. That was mostly the traders who was making the odds, and so they were making the product, actually. And we start to develop the online platform. So we start with the 3 IT guys in the team. We had a small office in the flat, just in the apartments, like 3 rooms apartments. So it was a startup, very limited budget, but we were really charged to do something new, and something which would be really profitable in the future.
Definitely.
So
I've got a few questions on it. In terms of, so when your father, he built the business up, was it almost overnight when they just changed the legislation and it was kind of, we're not allowed to, the bet, was it just a whole ban on betting and it was almost like?
Yeah, it was like the ban of the betting in Ukraine. So you cannot obtain the license in Ukraine, but you can obtain the international license as we done actually then.
Got it.
So, but we never work like the land-based because we catch that idea, that sphere, and the business will change a lot because we saw what was happening in some other markets like UK, for example, which was like many steps ahead of us. And we understand that we have to develop the digital product because that's the future. And now actually that everything is in digital. So nobody, I think, because now the legislation in Ukraine, for example, changed. And now that we can obtain the license in Ukraine and we've got it. But
did you say you can have the license now for the UK?
We had it. We have it.
So are you planning on reopening the stores or not?
No, that's what I was talking about, that even so we can do that. We can open the betting shops now in Ukraine and in some other countries because now Parimatch works not only in Ukraine. We are like international company now. We work in many places. So, but we are never trying to do that because we think that all our clients are online. So we develop only that part. And I think we will never return to the land-based business.
No, yeah, always looking for the future. I mean, when you started out, like you said, in the flat, like really startup style, small team. When did you? I'm assuming because you had, I mean, the value from the previous trademark would have been a good value add for you to get customers and recognition. But when did you see the growth? Was it almost instant when you launched, or was there a lot of kind of?
No,
I'm sure there's a lot of challenge, but yeah, how did it go?
That was a really long and challenging way because during that way we make a lot of mistakes, and some things was done not right, and then we will return to the first point to do that again, and a lot of money was burned because some things were not work, especially when we talk about the technology. That was the most difficult part actually to develop, and we really do a lot of mistakes, but in the end of the days, for now we have a very good product which we actually even plan to sell to some other clients.
So is that the underlying tech stack or the underlying application that you can like white label to another organization or something for them to use?
Yeah, that's what we've got for now. We have our own software on which the Parimatch operate, because now we have like different licenses in the different countries, and we've gave them our brand because we're also very strong in the marketing and in the brand. And we gave them the brand, we gave them the product, which is the software platform where the clients can make like bets, play, and also that's the mobile application and the back office, which the company can use for operating like CRM and some other tools.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, when you say about marketing, I noticed I'm a boxing fan, so I've noticed your branding with many of the Ukraine boxers. So Usyk recently, I think that's where a lot of our listeners maybe have seen him as one of your brand ambassadors. I guess in terms of betting, online betting and online gambling, there's always, I guess, a move for the new thing. I guess you're always trying to get an edge, right? And I'm curious with how do you, and it's probably really challenging, but how do you kind of stay ahead of the market or ahead of anyone? You see people like maybe doing scams or trying to beat the house, if you know what I mean. So your customers, do you have a big team that is always looking out for those?
You mean how we work with the customers, which is addicted, or?
So yeah, I mean, I guess there's that side addicted, but I guess the other side is where they're trying to get an edge against you. So
when they want to do some fraud, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or they have someone, because in the UK there was a lot of media and a lot of stories around kind of how people are doing this. So they might have someone at the game, and you're relying on the speed of the connection, all that type of stuff.
That's actually the part of our job, to work with such clients, and for that we have some special tools. Because previously, like some years ago, when we just started, we have like everything was done manually. Like we had a very big team who was working with such cases. Yeah, so that was manually mainly. So they were like analyze the behavior of the client, and they were like. For now, we have some special tools which help us to do that automatically. But there is also a team behind that, of course. So we work about that. We've had a lot of cases like that, I think, as each betting business or casino or
for sure. And then, so in terms of, I'm curious with the foundation, because I really want to kind of dive into that, and not just the programs, because we can talk about some of the great work you're doing, but I guess the idea behind it. When did you start to think that maybe we want to? You've been really like super successful, but you want to start to give back or start to make a wider impact?
So we established our foundation like 3 years ago, and actually when we start to think about it, I think the idea came up at the point when we moved to Cyprus, because now our headquarters are in Cyprus, and we moved there in it was 2018, I think. We moved our headquarters there, and when we became to work in that more European community, we understand we have to think about corporate social responsibility, because since that we were doing some charity in Ukraine, of course, but it was some small pieces, and it was like not systematically. It was like we helped there, then somebody came and asked us to support there, and we were open for that always, like, because we are actually by nature, we like to help people. I mean, for me, that's very important for my family. So, but that was not systematic. And when we came to Cyprus, when we moved to Cyprus, we understand how to do that in the proper way, actually. That was some new knowledge for me. And actually, I was really excited to do something for our company. And we decided to establish not just working with some other charities, but to establish our own charitable foundation. And that's how Parimatch Foundation appeared, actually. And when I was came up with that idea to my partners, and we were discussing the sphere where the foundation can work. Of course, we've got in the focus sport, because we are about sport from the beginning. Yes, we are about the bet on sport. So the sport was like always a very important part for us, and we were supporting a lot of some individual sportsmen or teams or the sport federation in Ukraine always. So we were like, that was like from one side, it was a little bit of the marketing, and from another side, it was a little bit of the charity, because we were helping them to survive as well. And we decided that the sport have to be our focus, but we also want to help children. So that's why we compare all that two components. And then I realized that the sport is a very cool instrument actually to develop the children. So that's why we choose the category of the children from 6 to 16-year-old, which is the school children. So because I believe that in that period of time, when they are in that age, you can really somehow help them and influence them, because that's the period for the development, and you can somehow help them to develop in the right way using the sport and the physical education.
Yeah, so and like you said, not just when you said at the top of the show, you've got the physical aspects of sport, so they can enjoy the programs, but also there's the life skills and the transferable other skills that they're learning through the activity. So in terms of the setup of the foundation, you got your pillars there with children and sport and 6 to 16-year-olds, but do you have, I guess, how do you make an impact? So are you funding other organizations, or are you running programs yourselves, or what's the main setup that you...
No, we are fully there is the kind of foundation who just giving the grants for some projects or for some other charities. We are like the more operational foundation. We really have a big team, and we're doing everything on our own. Like, for example, we have 3 programs now. One program is focused on the children with disabilities, because for that category of children, we believe there is very important to have some physical trainings. I mean, of course, we understand that most of them never will be the professional sportsmen, but we know that that's very good for their health and for their development, because that gives them the opportunity to be in the team, to have some time out, to develop some skills in communication by doing just simple sport as a football, for example, which is the most simple. And what we are doing, we are opening, because we start in Ukraine. Actually, the foundation is mostly focusing on Ukraine. Also, we're doing some programs on Cyprus. Like, we choose that 2 locations because that's like closer to us. We are from Ukraine, and now we are based in Cyprus, and for us it's also important to support the local community as well. So, and what we are doing, we just making the groups for the children with disabilities where they can come on the weekend, and having the training with the coach whom we previously study how to work with such a category of children, because there is some specific. So what we are doing, we are working first of all with the coaches or the teachers of the physical education who can train children as well. So we gave them some special study first, because they have to know how to work properly. So not everyone can work with children with disabilities. Then we organized for them the accommodation. So usually we work in the partnership with someone local, that can be some local business or the local authorities. They are usually very open to give some location, for example, for making that training once a week. Then we bought everything we need for trainings, like balls and some other stuff, some clothes for children. And actually we're having that training for such children like every week. We control it. Several times a year we came with the team to to each city where we have that group to see how it works, and we're doing some kind of the, how to say it, we call it open lesson, but it's like
like a festival or something. I think
like
we say
a
that
small
over here.
festival. When we before the war in Ukraine, that was very popular. The children's like that, and we always were trying to bring someone from the professional athletes here, someone from the, for example, in Ukraine, we usually ask someone from Shakhtar, the Shakhtar, football team, because we also sponsoring them. And we were asking someone from the players to come to that training, because that was so exciting for the children, and that was so important for them that players were playing with them with the balls. Then we were giving some gifts for children, so some kind of small festival.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then the other two programs, are they focused still on children? Obviously, you got the program for the children with potential disabilities and stuff. What are the other two programs you have there?
Yeah, we have that for the children with disabilities. Also, in the frame of that program, we support some professional sportsmen with disabilities, also the junior, like the children who are really talented. We gave them like the scholarships, and each year we have 25-30 children whom we support. That's like another part of that program. As for other two programs, another program, we call it Sport Mentor. And here we work mostly with the children from the low-income families and from the children who are
kind of disadvantaged.
Yeah, who, for example, who are like the police know them for doing some bad things,
Got it.
And
so we'd say that's maybe like intervention. So you're going to engage with them before they maybe go too far down that path and get
that's
trouble.
what we're trying to do. We're trying to give them sport as an alternative, for the going to street and doing some bad things. So we just gave them the sport as like alternative for something good. And in that program, we also focusing on the coaches, because coach is like a mentor for such children. And we think that that's very important, because usually such a category of children, they do not, like if you will come and say, let's go to the football training, they will never go first. But if there is the coach who will motivate them, well, they will, and that can really change their lives. So that's very important to work also with the coaches, what we are doing. We're trying to develop them. We're trying to choose the best coaches who are really know how to work and what to say, because that's the important to be a little bit with the psychological skills, to really
to make that connection and engage.
Make that connection. That's.
I mean, I'm really curious. We've had a lot of guests on the show who are doing great work and running foundations and different programs, and they always talked about during the pandemic, it was crisis time, their services were needed more than ever. But now, if we like for yourself, with the conflict and the war in Ukraine, you must be seeing that, right? There's children that are accessing your services or your programs, and I know a lot of maybe left the country, but how has it impacted the foundation and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, when the war started in February, we of course understand that the sport is not the first things the children in Ukraine need for now. That's why actually we put on the hold all our program at that of the first 4 months of the war, and we were focusing mostly of helping the families with children. We were helping for the temporary moved families with children who was forced to leave their homes and to move to some other places, which was more safety. And usually that families were living in shelters, and we were working with the shelters in 5 towns on the eastern Ukraine, where we were help them to organize the places for sleep for that children. Also, we were bringing the humanitarian aid for that families. We were help also to evacuate some families from the hot points. So what else? That was the first things we are doing then. In some 4 months, we understand that we have to a little bit return to our sport programs, because the war it's a horrible thing, but children still have to develop and they still have to return to their normal life. And we were trying to do that through trying to make some sport trainings in the shelters for children, just to, to do something else except sitting and waiting for something change.
Yeah.
That's the first things. Then other things we realized at that time that now we have to work more with like trauma of war, we call it, like, because all children in Ukraine now had that psychological trauma, because that's not easy to go through that. It's not easy to adult people, but for children it's even more complicated. And we're trying to work with that also. What we have done, we have a very nice, very good, actually strong cooperation with the Israel Coalition of Trauma, because the Israel is a very unique country. They have that experience of living
living in that environment,
in the war. Yeah, so they know how to work with that trauma and they have a great experience. And what we've done, we are start to making training for the psychologist who then will work with the children. And that actually works very good. I don't remember the numbers now, but it was really the big amount of the psychologist who was passed through that our training. And it was really effective, because then they go and they start to work with the families, with the shelters. They start to work with the children in a school and so on. And that's very important, because that psychologist, they have to work first with the children, but also with their families, with the parents, because usually parents don't know how to talk about the war and what's happening with their children. That was very important also for them to know how to explain, how to talk in a proper way, not to make wars. So that's really important.
That program with obviously the training program that you put together, is that, obviously we're talking about the shelters within the country, but all this, obviously so many displaced families and children. Is there a way that you're able to, or is that something you're thinking about potentially to maybe spread that training out and distribute it? Because I know there's a lot of, maybe some of our listeners, they'll be working on their sports programs in the UK and wider. They'll be working with children from the Ukraine who are over here displaced at the moment. Maybe it's just a good idea, maybe an idea, if you're thinking about it.
We are not working now, we are not working with the children outside of Ukraine, but we have it in the plans. And now we're discussing some program which I think we will in a very short time start in UK for the Ukrainian families who was moved. Yeah, that's what we are thinking of. Also in Cyprus, we will do the same, but it all takes time.
You've got the training with the psychologists, and if there's any kind of resources that coaches might be able to tap into and use, I'm sure there'll be many people interested. I'm sure before war broke out and before the conflict began, you had a kind of a vision for what you wanted to do with the foundation and where you wanted to take it. Is that, I'm sure it's distracted at the moment, that's not the focus, but was that just to kind of work in more countries around the world and grow and impact more children?
No,
initially?
Actually, before the war, I think we've had it in the mind to maybe expand to some other countries. First of all, where the company operates, to support also the local community there. But when the war started, we are actually focused strongly on Ukraine, and that's why we decided, for example, for next year, we will strongly focus on Ukraine and do some stuff also in Cyprus, because we think until the war finish, we have to support fully with all our resources. We have to support Ukrainian people and children for sure, because there is no other way,
Exactly. I guess in talking more about your experience of developing the organization, so you've obviously done it with the commercial side and now with the foundation. Have you kind of developed any strategies or approaches to building a team or leading or in business specifically or building organizations? Do you have something that you always use?
I can't say I have some strategy or something like that. That's mostly intuition and the feeling,
That's the best way.
But what I learned from all that year, that the most important thing is the people in your team. And you, first of all, have to focus on them, because that's the main value, actually, you have, the proper team. Because that's, if you do not have the right people around you, all other things will just fall down. So that's why I always say that the people is the key. And we in Parimatch and also in foundation, we always trying to do our best to to care about our team, about our employees. So that's why we actually doing a lot for them, trying to develop them, to give them opportunity to develop themselves, to give them opportunity to have that work-life balance. The family is also very important for us. We used to have that family events, and we, for example, now when the war in Ukraine started, because before the war we've got R&D team in Ukraine. And when the war started, first things we do, we start to supporting our people, our employees. We're trying to help them to move to some safe places. We have like the headquarters on Cyprus, who was working like 24 hours per day to help people.
Logistics and trying to help,
logistically, to find the place where to stay at night, how to choose the right way, where to have a petrol and such things. And they were coordinating that. Guys who were doing that at that time, they're really, really heroes, I think, because they were absolutely not sleeping, just doing that work. Yeah, that was the most important things for us.
What do you look for with this? Just so curious on it, like building the team. Is there anything that when you're hiring and when you first started out, you're looking for your key hires? Is there anything that characteristics that you look for in people when you're recruiting, building that team?
Actually, for me, as I told before, it's more feeling. I used to feel the people like, I cannot say I have the list of the characteristic that I can just scratch. Okay, that is good. That is we had here. Like, of course, the experience is very important. The knowledge is very important. But in the end of the day, the most important thing is how curious the person about what you propose to him to do, because I like, and I always trying to judge people in my team who will be really charged with what they're doing, who will be really not coming to the job just to do the job and have their salary, but who will be like, who will do their job for idea, first of all, for the goal, for the common goal. That is important, because I always like when the people, when it's really important for them what they're doing, not just because, not just doing that for money. Of course, the money is very important and everybody have to be paid, but that's also very important when the people really enjoying what they're doing. In that case, they're doing that good.
Yeah, they've got that purpose, that passion for the role. I'm curious, obviously we're talking foundation at the moment, but obviously you Parimatch tech business, you're a female leader in tech. Do you have any kind of challenges that you've had to, I'm sure you have many challenges you overcome, but is there any that kind of stick out that was kind of the main challenges for you as you were growing the business with the team?
The main challenges for me was always the technology, because as I told from the beginning, I'm the humanitarian. So it always was hard for me to be on the same page with the technical team, and that's most challenging part for me in the business. But I try to just to be sure the people who are work in my company, they are really professional and I can trust them. Another challenging thing, if to talk about the foundation, for example, the most challenging that the foundation is established by betting business, actually, by Parimatch. And when you usually tell to people or to some partners or for the media that you are the betting company who established the foundation and you work with children.
Oh, they think we're trying to get the children to gamble, right?
Yes, we always were like, why children? Why are you working with the children? And of course, there was a lot of the people who were telling that we are doing that for marketing reason, that we are doing that to engage children into the betting and or to make them loyal to our brand or something like that. And that was really a challenge, which I was trying to go through, because for me that was important to explain for the people that we are not doing that for marketing or for some things. We are doing that because we think that it's important to work with the future generation, not to work with the adults, but we see ourselves working with the children, because we think that the better time for open their potential and to develop them is that age. That's it. Like, we do not have any other reason behind that. So, and it's really challenging. And sometimes we stuck with some projects because we cannot move on, because some partners do not want to work with us because of that, because that due to some compliance things, that's too much for them to work with the foundation, which is established by a betting company and such things.
So we're talking about challenges, and everyone in business has kind of stresses and challenges and things they need to work through. And like with the current environment and the war and things like that we've been speaking about, what do you kind of lean on? What do you have any habits or anything like that you do every day to make sure that you're working at kind of top performance and you got all the stress managed and your outputs at a high level? Do you have anything that you do kind of day to day and always lean on?
No, I cannot say I have something like that I'm doing day to day. For me, the most important thing that's to control everything. So that's why my team, for example, they know I need to have everything in my calendar, not to forget, that is important for me. So usually, actually, I do not have such habits, but when I'm doing something, because sometimes, you are tired and you start to do some wrong things, really. And at that moment, it's very important to listen to what your people around you are telling to you. And usually that's my team who is like making some hints to me that something going wrong. Maybe you will have some, stop, and we will think about that tomorrow. So that's very important to listen to the people with whom you work, actually.
This is the last question for me, and we normally ask everyone who comes on the show. It's a reflective one. So if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice when you're just starting out, let's say you were finishing up the journalism degree and you're going to give yourself one piece of advice, what would you go back and tell yourself?
First of all, if to go back, I will choose another faculty in the university.
Or statistics or something, yeah, probabilities.
Yeah, that's the first thing, because now I understand there is more helpful faculties which will be more, helpful in the future for you in the business. Some other thing that I will tell to myself, maybe that's not to be afraid to look stupid if you don't understand some things, and you just have to ask, and that's normal, like because sometimes there is things you don't understand, and you just afraid to ask people about that to explain you, and because you are thinking I will look like stupid, at that point. And it what happened with me in the past. And that's what I will tell to myself, not to be afraid you will look stupid. Just ask, and it will save your time,
Yeah, exactly. There's no stupid questions.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to learn it. Katerina, I'm so thankful for you to come on the show today. It's been a pleasure meeting you and speaking with you. And all of the work that you're doing with the foundation, we'll link it in the show notes. And anyone who wants to get involved partnership-wise and things like that, they can kind of reach out.
Thank you. That was a really pleasant time to talk to you. Pleasant conversation.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can write to us at dryphase.podcast@coordinate.cloud, tweet us at coordinatesport, or follow us on Instagram at coordinate_sport, or on my account at James_ventures. This episode was produced by Nancy Kwamboka, with support from Claire Goodchild and Lola Small, with special thanks to Rochelle. I'm James Moore, and you've been listening to The Drive Phase from Coordinate Sport.